Attica Correctional Facility, 1956. The yard was where you learned who mattered, not in the cells, not in the mess hall. Those places had guards watching, routines that couldn't be broken, structures that kept chaos at arm's length. But the yard was different. 2 hours a day, weather permitting, prisoners were released into a 100 by 100-foot square surrounded by 20-foot walls. Guards watched from towers, watched but rarely intervened unless blood was spilled. Inside those 100 feet, prisoners established their own order. And in the spring of 1956, a man named Carl Bruiser McKenna decided he was going to establish a new one. Bruiser arrived at Attica on March 12th, transferred from Sing Sing after what the guards called disciplinary issues. The issues weren't complicated. Bruiser was a white supremacist who'd assaulted 3 black prisoners over 6 months, each time claiming self-defense, each time getting away with it because prison justice worked differently than the kind outside. He was 6'5", 270 pounds, with a shaved head that showed scars from old fights and a swastika tattooed on his neck where everyone could see it. Within a week, he'd mapped the yard's hierarchy and decided to remake it. Bumpy noticed him on day 3. Not because of the size or the tattoo. Bumpy had been inside long enough to know that symbols didn't mean anything without action behind them. He noticed because of the pattern. Day 3, yard time, 2 p.m. Bumpy was doing what he did every day, walking the perimeter, slow, methodical. 50 laps over 2 hours. It kept his legs strong, his mind clear, his presence visible without being aggressive. On his 7th lap, he saw Bruiser approach a young black prisoner who was sitting on a bench reading a letter from home. Bruiser walked past, close enough that his leg brushed the prisoner's shoulder. "Move," Bruiser said. The prisoner looked up, confused. "I'm just sitting here." "I said move." The prisoner stood, walked to a different bench. Bruiser sat down where the young man had been sitting, stretched out, smiled at his 2 associates who'd watched the whole thing. Bumpy walked past, noted it, said nothing. Day 5, yard time. An older black prisoner, maybe 55, gray hair, doing time for something that happened when he was young and stupid, was playing chess with another inmate at one of the concrete tables. Bruiser walked up mid-game, picked up the chessboard and threw it. Pieces scattered across the concrete. "Game's over," Bruiser said. The older prisoner stood slowly. "We were playing that." "Not anymore." The prisoner looked at Bruiser, looked at the scattered pieces, looked at the guards in the tower who were watching but not moving. He sat back down, said nothing. Bruiser walked away. Bumpy was on his 23rd lap. He'd seen the chess game start, saw it end, saw the moment the older prisoner decided it wasn't worth the fight. Bumpy kept walking. Day 8, yard time. A group of black prisoners were doing pull-ups on the bar at the north end of the yard, taking turns, counting reps, trying to maintain some sense of physical dignity in a place designed to break it. Bruiser walked up while one of them was mid-set, grabbed the man's legs and pulled him off the bar. The prisoner hit the ground hard. "Bar's closed," Bruiser said. One of the other prisoners stepped forward. "We've got it for another 20 minutes. "Not anymore." The prisoner who'd stepped forward was younger, stronger, less inclined to back down. He looked at Bruiser, measuring the odds. Bruiser's 2 associates moved closer. The prisoner looked around the yard. No guards coming, no backup. Just math that didn't work in his favor. "Come on," he said to his group. They left. Bruiser didn't use the pull-up bar. He just stood next to it for the rest of yard time, making sure nobody else did either. Bumpy was on his 39th lap when this happened. He watched the entire sequence, noted how Bruiser was testing boundaries, seeing what he could take without consequence. Bumpy kept walking. By day 15, the pattern was clear. Bruiser was systematically claiming territory in the yard, not through violence. Violence brought guards. Through humiliation, through making black prisoners move, stop, leave, Defer. Small acts, daily, consistent. He'd take someone's spot on a bench, interrupt a conversation, knock a book out someone's hands, step on someone's shoe and not apologize. Each act was too small to report, too minor to fight over, but added together, they created an atmosphere where black prisoners started avoiding certain areas of the yard entirely. Bumpy watched all of it. He never changed his route, never altered his 50 laps, never acknowledged Bruiser's presence, even though Bruiser was clearly aware of him. Other prisoners started wondering why Bumpy didn't do anything. Bumpy Johnson had been inside for 2 years. He had a reputation that preceded him. Word traveled through the prison system about who he'd been on the outside, what he'd done, who he'd protected. But he wasn't doing anything about Bruiser. Some thought maybe he was too old, 53 now, still strong but not young. Others thought maybe he was smart, avoiding trouble that would extend his sentence. Nobody understood what Bumpy was actually doing. He was documenting, cataloging, waiting. Day 22, yard time. A young black prisoner, maybe 24, first-timer, scared, was standing near the fence, talking quietly to himself. Prayer, maybe, or just working through fear. Bruiser walked up behind him, shoved him face first into the chain link. "Nobody wants to hear you mumbling," Bruiser said. The prisoner turned, nose bleeding, eyes watering. "I wasn't bothering anyone," he said quietly. "You're bothering me." The prisoner wiped his nose, walked away toward the medical station. Bruiser watched him go, satisfied. Bumpy was on his 18th lap. He saw the shove, saw the blood, saw Bruiser's associates laughing. He walked past without breaking stride. But something shifted in his expression. Not anger, not rage, something colder. Calculation. Day 31, yard time. An older prisoner, probably 60, frail, doing his last year before release, was sitting in the sun with his eyes closed. 10 minutes of warmth on his face. Small mercy in a place without mercy. Bruiser walked up and kicked the bench legs out from under him. The old man hit the ground. "That's my spot," Bruiser said. The old man got up slowly, joints protesting, dignity shattered. He walked away without looking back. Bruiser sat down in the sun. Bumpy was on his 42nd lap. He slowed as he approached, just enough to see the old man's face as he walked past. Humiliation, pure and simple. Bumpy kept walking. But now other prisoners were watching him, wondering why, when, if. Day 43, yard time. The chess players were back, trying to play at a table on the far side of the yard, away from Bruiser's usual territory. Bruiser noticed. He walked over, picked up the board again, and this time threw it over the fence. "Told you, game's over." One of the chess players, the 55-year-old with gray hair, stood up. "We moved away from you. We weren't bothering you." "You're bothering me by existing," Bruiser said. The gray-haired prisoner's hands clenched. He was calculating odds, same as everyone else did, weighing fight against consequence. Bruiser saw the calculation and smiled. "Go ahead, old man. Try it." The prisoner unclenched his fists, walked away. Bumpy was on his 27th lap. He'd watched Bruiser walk across the yard specifically to find someone to humiliate. This wasn't about territory anymore. This was about power for its own sake. Bumpy kept walking. Day 51, yard time. The young prisoner who'd been shoved into the fence was back, trying to find a quiet corner to exist in. Bruiser found him. "You still here?" Bruiser said. "Thought I made it clear you don't belong." "I'm just doing my time," the young prisoner said quietly. "You're doing it wrong." Bruiser shoved him again. Same fence, same result. Blood from reopening the cut on his nose. This time, the young prisoner didn't walk away to medical. He just sat down where he was, back against the fence, defeated. Bruiser walked away, satisfied. Bumpy was on his 34th lap. He saw the whole thing. For the first time in 51 days, he stopped walking. Not near Bruiser, not in any way that drew attention. He just stopped, stood still, looked at the young prisoner sitting against the fence with blood running down his face and nowhere left to go. Then Bumpy resumed walking, but now he was counting something else. Day 58, yard time. The pattern continued. Bruiser's confidence was absolute now. He moved through the yard like he owned it, taking what he wanted, pushing who he wanted, establishing that black prisoners existed at his discretion. The guards never intervened. This was prison. This was how things worked. As long as nobody died, they let the hierarchy sort itself out. At 2:47 p.m., something changed. The frail old man, the one who'd had his bench kicked out from under him on day 31, was walking slowly along the fence. Exercise, doctor's orders, 5 laps a day to keep circulation going. He was on his 3rd lap when he stumbled. Not dramatically, just age and exhaustion catching up. He caught himself on the fence, stood there for a moment catching his breath. Bruiser saw him. "You're in the way," Bruiser called out. The old man looked over. "I'm just walking. I'll move." "Move now." The old man started walking again, slow, as fast as his body would allow. Not fast enough for Bruiser. Bruiser walked over, shoved the old man in the back. The old man fell forward, hit the concrete, didn't get up. "Stay down if you can't keep up," Bruiser said. The old man tried to push himself up. His arms were shaking. 60 years old, frail, scared, trying to stand. Bruiser looked down at him and raised his boot. "Maybe you need help staying down." His foot was coming up, aimed at the old man's ribs. 1 kick, maybe 2, enough to break something, enough to send a message that even the weakest had no protection. The boot reached its apex, started descending. That's when Bumpy spoke for the first time in 58 days. "No." 1 word, quiet, said from 15 feet away where Bumpy had stopped walking mid-lap. Bruiser froze. Boot still raised, old man still on the ground beneath it. Bruiser turned his head slowly. "What did you say?" "I said no," Bumpy repeated, same calm, like he was commenting on weather. "Put your foot down." Bruiser smiled. This was the moment he'd been waiting for. Bumpy Johnson, finally reacting. "Or what, old man? Or you'll regret where it lands." The yard went quiet. Not suddenly, gradually. Conversation stopping, movement slowing, everyone's attention shifting to the 2 men and the old man on the ground between them. Bruiser lowered his boot, stepped over the old man toward Bumpy. "You've been walking around here for 2 months like you don't see what's happening. Now you want to say something?" "I saw everything," Bumpy said. "I always saw it." "Then why didn't you do anything about it?" "Because I was waiting to see how far you'd go. Now I know." Bruiser was 3 feet away now, 6'5", 270 pounds, standing over a man who was 5'9", 53 years old, who hadn't said a word to him in 2 months. "You think you can stop me?" Bruiser asked. "I know I can," Bumpy said. "Then try." Bruiser swung. What happened next took 3 seconds. Bumpy didn't move backward. He moved forward, inside Bruiser's reach before the punch could generate power. 1 strike, fast, precise, to the throat. Not hard enough to crush, but hard enough to close the airway temporarily. Bruiser's hands went to his neck, gasping. 2nd strike, to the solar plexus. Air that was already gone got forced out harder. 3rd strike, to the knee, lateral, against the joint at an angle bodies aren't designed to resist. Bruiser went down. The entire sequence was over before most people registered it had started. Bumpy stepped back, looked down at Bruiser on the concrete, and said 6 words. "You're done, in this yard, forever." Then he turned to the old man still on the ground. "You all right?" The old man nodded, shaken but unhurt because the kick never landed. Bumpy helped him to his feet. By the time the guards arrived, finally moving after the fight started, Bruiser was on the ground claiming he slipped, and Bumpy was back to walking his laps. Nobody contradicted Bruiser's story because everyone understood what had actually happened. Bruiser spent 3 days in medical, crushed trachea, bruised ribs, dislocated knee. He told the guards he fell wrong. They didn't believe him, but they didn't investigate. That's how prison worked. When Bruiser returned to the yard, everything had changed. He didn't claim territory, didn't shove anyone, didn't take anyone's bench. He walked his own laps, stayed on his own side, did his time quietly. His 2 associates drifted away. Power attracts, weakness repels. 6 months later, Bruiser requested a transfer. It was approved. The old man Bumpy helped that day finished his sentence 8 months later. On his last day, he found Bumpy in the yard. "Mr. Johnson," he said, "I never thanked you for what you did." "Didn't do it for thanks," Bumpy said. "Why did you wait so long? You watched him hurt people for almost 2 months. Bumpy thought about that. Because if I'd stopped him the first day, or the 10th day, or the 20th day, I would have been another prisoner fighting over disrespect. But I waited until he crossed a line that everyone agreed couldn't be crossed, until he was about to kick a man who couldn't defend himself. That way, when I stopped him, it wasn't about me, it was about principle. And that matters in here, especially in here. Outside, you can call the police. Inside, all you have is understanding. Everyone in this yard understood why I waited, and everyone understood why I moved when I did. That's the difference between a fight and a message." The old man nodded slowly. "Thank you anyway. You're welcome. Now get out of here and don't come back." The story of Day 58 became prison legend, not because of violence. Violence happened every day, but because of what came before it. 58 days of watching, 58 days of silence, 58 days of appearing to do nothing while actually measuring, calculating, understanding exactly when intervention would mean something beyond personal grievance. The prisoners who'd wondered why Bumpy waited understood afterward. Acting sooner would have been reaction. Acting when he did made it about protection. And protection is what builds respect in places where respect is the only currency that matters. Bumpy Johnson served 2 more years at Attica. He never had another confrontation. Not because people feared him, because people understood him. And understanding is more powerful than fear. It means you know exactly what someone is capable of, exactly when they'll prove it, and exactly why. Bruiser learned that on Day 58. The rest of the yard learned it by watching. And the silence that followed wasn't submission, it was acknowledgement that real power doesn't announce itself. It waits, observes, measures, and when it moves with purpose. 3 seconds, that's all it took. But those 3 seconds were built on 58 days of patience. And that's the difference between chaos and control, between violence and justice, between reaction and principle. Bumpy Johnson understood that difference. And after Day 58, so did everyone else.